What do you understand about the way that the funding's kind of now going to be distributed?
Yeah, so last week, Minister Shane Reti announced that 122 million of research funding is going to be reallocated to the New Zealand Advanced Technology Institute. And that's a significant signal. It's so some of that funding may previously have gone directly to what we might know as sort of, primary industries research, which we're so strong at doing.
What did winning that Fieldays Innovation Award mean for the progress of this product and the business as a whole?
It was amazing. The great thing about being in that innovation tent is that that's where, if you go to the field days, no matter who you are, people will generally go through there and be really interested in hearing your story. So it was a fantastic way to get our story and our concept out there, and we were so well received. So that was really, really uplifting.
Right, time to talk a bit of AgriTech. And of course, as you're probably well aware, entries are open for the 2026 Fieldays Innovation Awards. And I believe that the entries are open until the 24th of this month. So you've still got a bit of time if you want to get your entries in. But we're bringing in Brendan O'Connell now, the AgriTech New Zealand Chief Executive, to talk through the world of AgriTech, see what's going on and what's happening. And he has been a member of the awards judging panel for the past few years. I don't think he's there this year, but we can find out. Nice to have you on the show again. How are you, Brendan?
Hey, Dom, really good. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat.
No problem at all. So I'm correct in saying that you have been on the awards judging panel for the previous few years?
Yeah, that's right. It's been a great pleasure to do that. You get a great insight about what's going on around the sector when you're part of those innovation awards, and great to see all the sort of the repeat entries as you see companies applying at different levels. In different years as they grow and progress themselves. It's always a really good dynamic. And so AgriTech New Zealand is still a really big supporter of the Innovation Awards. We're promoting it, particularly to overseas groups and the overseas groups that we end up interacting with. But I've been freed up from my judgment duties this year, so I get to enjoy Wednesday of field days rather than having to spend all that time doing the judging piece. But we'll be keeping a key eye on who wins the awards, which will be announced on the Thursday night of Field Days as well. So, like you say, only a few weeks to go for entries. I think it's the end of April closing date. So, a few weeks to go. Really encourage people to get in there and get the names through.
One of the interesting things that we've been doing recently is going back and interviewing people who have won awards, 2, 3, 4 years ago at the prototype stage in particular, and just sort of seeing how they've tracked since then. And I think winning one of those Fieldays Innovation Awards certainly, it doesn't hurt, does it?
Oh, it gets great visibility. I mean, at multiple levels, you get great visibility, but you also get great direct feedback because, farmers, everybody who attends field days, it's sort of one of the have-to places to see. So you end up getting really direct feedback from people. So for those earlier stage entries in the prototype stage and in those earlier stages, it's really invaluable just to get quick feedback. And then for those on the growth and scale and larger stages, yeah, you get great visibility. You get great support in terms of some of the award materials that you get afterwards and access to advice and media. So really impactful. And like you say, it's been great to see those sort of because you can't call them repeat offenders. They've been repeat winners in some way where they sort of apply and come through year on year. And I'm pretty sure we'll be hearing about from a lot of the past winners who will continue getting engaged there.
And one of the things that I know that you're particularly focused on is, I guess, what you'd broadly term the global reach of these things. So, you might enter an awards, you might win something or get a placing and that sort of thing. But it's the international exposure as well, I think now, and particularly something like Field Days, but sort of across the board more generally, which is where you guys come in, that global reach. How do we sort of stack up in that regard, do you think?
Yeah, I think we stack up really well actually, and Field Days is great because it attracts so many overseas groups in. So we'll be hosting an event on the Thursday of Fieldays this year as a global AgriTech connector, and there's going to be, several groups visiting from the UK. Looks like some groups coming through from Germany, from Singapore, from Brazil, and so New Zealand stacks up really well. People want to come and have a look. We've had a lot of interest and requests from people over in the States recently when they see some of New Zealand's agri-tech successes. And those global connections are really important. If we want the best technologies for our farmers and growers here in New Zealand, we want to encourage levels of investment and levels of innovation that are probably even greater than you might find a return on investment of here in New Zealand. You want to be able to, if you're doing it for global audiences, but applying it here locally first, we're going to be getting better technologies and better solutions through onto our own sort of New Zealand farms and orchards. So those global connections are important because they justify greater levels of investment. They highlight New Zealand's role in being brilliant at food production, but also brilliant at the sort of the agri-tech that sort of enables that level of food production. And we're tracking well on that regard. When you look, there was a report done before at the end of last year in November that sort of highlights the rate of growth, the compound annual growth rate of New Zealand agri-tech is actually at least up to, if not leading, what's happening in terms of global agri-tech adoption. So that's a credit both to our innovators and what they're doing here and the technology providers, but also the attitude of our farmers and growers, how they look, how open they are to giving things a go and making it work within real farming systems. So yeah, it's something that Fieldays does a really good job of highlighting, both what's happening on farm, but also what's happening in terms of the innovation environment. So that's why the awards are so cool.
Yeah, and that actually leads on to another interesting point in relation to the funding and this sort of thing, because if we are kind of leading the way in that regard, I see that there's going to be a portion now of bioeconomy research sort of being, I guess, it's the overall pie, I guess you'd say, of research funding, but there's a slice now sort of specifically going to agri-tech. Have I got that right? What do you understand about the way that the funding's kind of now going to be distributed?
Yeah, so last week, Minister Shane Reti announced that 122 million of research funding is going to be reallocated to advanced technology, to the New Zealand Advanced Technology Institute. And that's a significant signal. It's so some of that funding may previously have gone directly to what we might know as sort of, primary industries research, which we're so strong at doing. And so the message is that that funding is now going to advanced technologies, but the expectation is that'll still be applied back into primary industries. And so that sort of application of advanced technologies into primary industries is the very definition of agri-tech. And so, it's a shift in messaging. It's going, it's sort of saying that the next level of value generation of both of food and fiber out of New Zealand, but also of technology out of New Zealand, this other vertical of how we can bring wealth to New Zealand, is going to come from advanced technology. So it's quite a strong signal in terms of that shift in the research community. I think it's pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of good sense in knowing, in sort of investing in what those technologies can mean for New Zealand. There's a challenge in it as well. It's sort of, we want to make sure that all of the strengths that we do have in primary sector research that's encapsulated now in the Bioeconomy Science Institute, since it merged Plant and Food and Scion and Ag Research and Manaki Whenua all together, all of that sort of, real proof point that we have in terms of our natural systems and our primary industries and all that research now gets complemented by the investment in technology. So there's going to be a bit of reshifting and reskilling, I think, when we look at, where do the research skills come from in terms of advanced technologies, and what do we need to do to grow that capability, and how do we make sure it stays aligned with what we're doing and what we know and understand from our primary industries. So really important signaling. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, but it's non-trivial to sort of make it work afterwards as well, as to sort of, bring those advanced technology skills fully and firmly into what we need from a primary industries perspective and from a technology export perspective as well.
Mm.
Exciting news, I think, but yeah, non-trivial to act on it.
Yeah, I think there's been criticism of the shrinking pie, though, in general, of if you want to call it R&D or bioeconomy, or however you want to term that. I mean, there has been chatter that it's just not enough. I suppose it's never enough, though, Brendan, is it really? Yeah.
Well, that's always that is true, and I guess and we need to put money where we can afford to put it. To some extent, there's all sorts of decisions being made. Whether it's you're talking about the investment in research, whether you're talking about the investment in our health system, whether you're talking about the investments in our education system. I don't envy the job that our politicians do to try and reallocate those things. I think something that we all need to face up to, and that includes our politicians, our researchers, our investors, our innovators, is that we need to be getting better results out of these investments, and that's the core message that's coming through. It's sort of saying we need to realign, what impact research is having. And so in addition to the reallocation of funds, that a lot of other changes are happening in our science system that's sort of highlighting it's not good enough that the outputs of our science system is published papers or even just results on our own farms and orchards. Much as we need to see those results on our farms and orchards, we need to be getting more impact for the country, creating more wealth for the country. That means we need to continue doing what we do and improving what we do in food and fiber, but we need other ways of earning a buck here as well. And that means getting better results out of our technology exports and the impact that we can have on growing systems all around the world, because that improves what our GDP is for New Zealand, that improves what outcomes we're getting. And so we need other options. And that's, I think, what a lot of this messaging is trying to achieve.
I think that's a really good point you raise, actually. There has been a Kellogg research paper done recently, I think, in the last sort of year or so from somebody. I can't quite remember the details, but what I do remember is they've kind of looked at, okay, we've got agriculture and we've got tourism. What's the third pillar, if you like, or the other thing that we could, as you so put it, Brendan, earn a buck from? And I think that's a really important discussion, because we're at the mercy of so many things that we can't control in both tourism and agriculture, really, that you want to find something else to hang your hat on as well, while also strengthening, those two pillars as well.
You obviously don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Those are core strengths that New Zealand has. And so we want to protect and grow. So from a tourism point of view, protect and grow what's precious here. From a food and fiber point of view, know that is and always will be a core strength of ours. It might need to be applied in slightly different ways. We need to find more value, of course. And so it's not an either or, it's an addition to those things, and it's part of the pathway. I mean, part of the logic shift I'd love to see happen is sort of, we are rightly proud of what we do from a food and fiber perspective out of New Zealand. We are truly world class at doing it. And yet we're finding boundaries on how much wealth we can generate out of that, what it means for New Zealand. We're constantly trying to push this volume to value piece, and we're trying to look for something else. I guess trying to look at, how do we capture more value from how we grow, not just what we grow, is that sort of shift in sort of going, agri-tech isn't something that's just enabling food and fiber. It's actually an output of our food and fiber capabilities. So let's look at trying to capture more value out of that and have some positive impact around the world as well. There's other people that don't grow food as well as we do. We can help them do that. That has positive impacts in what that means in terms of our contribution to the globe, but also brings wealth into New Zealand as well, because we're being rewarded for those sort of knowledge economy pieces, not just our primary economy pieces. Like I say, it's not either or, it's a positive build.
Yeah, that's exactly the way to frame it. I think that's that makes perfect sense. It's fascinating. I've certainly noticed that we have taken to the world of agri-tech, if you like, and the development and the invention and the innovation and all of that sort of stuff since I've been doing this. Let's say 10 years for argument's sake. It's it's kind of gone from, I would say, few and far between. I may be wrong. This is just perception, to actually quite a bit of stuff that's actually pretty good as well. Now, whether or not that's realised in the market is another question, which I guess is what you're talking about as well. It kind of has to be. You can hypothesize all you like, but I have noticed that certainly it's something that we have embraced.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're in a really different phase. I mean, Dom, we've been talking for many years, and all of us have sort of been looking at, what the role of technology within productive systems is. And we've seen some really cool stuff over the years. But I think we've shifted gears in the last while. We're seeing that these are not just, interesting pieces of fringe activity that all the early adopters are doing. We're now seeing that, wide scale adoption of these technologies is happening. We're seeing the technologies themselves are maturing, and, things that we've been complaining about for a decade, like, duplicate systems, where you have to enter data in multiple times. Whilst that still exists in some places, it's happening a lot less because there are integrations happening and data exchange happening at new levels, particularly in the dairy industry. And so we're seeing things shift, and these new capabilities are not sort of fringe activities anymore. And you just see it in the levels of adoption. You see it in the maturity of the solutions that are coming to market, and you see it in the level of investments that are beginning to happen. There's some very big money going towards these things that wouldn't be justified unless they were delivering real value on farm and orchards and had the potential to deliver more value on farms and orchards. There's great levels of investments happening, and so yeah, I think we're in a bit of a new phase.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think as well, I was speaking to a husband and wife farming couple a week or so ago, and they were early adopters of Halter as an example. And they were talking about the almost perception of other farmers around that, what are these guys doing? It's, sort of showboating and all this sort of stuff. And, it's trying to, flash around how much money they've got and these sorts of things. So they were kind of reluctant, but also could see potential benefit down the line. And, Halter's one example. We could use 100, but now there's no way if you got Halter on your farm, your neighbours wouldn't look at you sideways. It would just be like, oh, okay, that's just what people do now.
I think technologies that organizations like Halter and Gallagher and Herdeye and Amer and Brovonic and Levno and there's any number of brilliant companies out there. And that, like I say, it's not fringe activity anymore.
No.
It's core practice, and it's well understood, it's well developed. And the users there, the people who are getting value out of it, the farmers and growers, it's not just those brilliant. I mean, New Zealand is blessed. I think we've got we did some research back in 2022, which said the population of sort of trailblazers or early adopters was about 12 or 15% of the overall population. Now, if you're looking at any other technology type than agri-tech, you're looking in fintech or medtech at other parts of the world, your community or your population has about 5% of those sort of people that are willing to be early adopters. So we're already sort of ahead of the curve in the agri space, and I think that's a lot of that is just down to the mindset of what it means to be farming and growing. You've got to be, particularly in New Zealand, where you're not, we're not having the waters muddied with subsidies and different ways of looking at performance on farm. It's all about actual productivity and actually making progress. There's more willingness here to sort of look at things that can make a difference, and so we have a larger population of those early adopters. But even that now, when you look at the level of adoption that we've got across all of these technologies, it's gone way beyond just the early adopters or even the fast followers. We're absolutely into that sort of, vast majority of people who are farming and growing with real commercial mindsets. That technology is a known tool and a needed tool in that space. Not to say that there aren't still problems to resolve, not to say that everything's rosy out there, but it's at a different level now than it has been ever before.
100%. Now, AI, where do you stand? There's so many applications of it. We're already seeing it, obviously. The exponential pace, though, the change of pace is something that's just absolutely quite extraordinary. I mean, you'll have your work cut out just trying to keep up with everything that's going on, really. And I mean, you're at the vanguard of this sort of stuff. I mean, imagine for the average person, you know.
I don't know if anybody's at the vanguard of this stuff, to be honest, Dom. I mean, it's happening so fast that even if you think you know what's going on, it's changed. It's changed a couple of months later.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
and as you know, it's impacting every aspect of our life. I'm sure it's impacting what your role is and what your job is in the media sense, and what tools you've got, and how to get messages out there and stories out there. It's the same in farming. It's the same in running an industry association in terms of trying to map out who needs to know who and how do you connect them. I mean, these tools are just, changing all of our lives in different ways. And it's confronting to try and face up to that and understand, what's going to be happening, to different jobs and different roles going forward. I would have I would hazard a guess, though, when it comes to actual, sort of food production, that there are things that need to be supported by new tools and new capabilities, but this it still needs the sensitivities and the knowledge of insight of what human experience is. So I think there'll be a lot of complementary tool sets out there, but it's not going to take away, it's not going to take away jobs. It's going to enhance where we can get value from. But yeah, it's hard to keep up with everything that's there, without doubt.
Well, I have heard the theory posited. I don't know where you stand on this, but it's why it's an interesting question. Is the fact that I've heard people talk about farms in future. Really, you got someone who's looking after software effectively, and that's kind of because of the automation, the robotics, you get your drones going up identifying areas to spray, and then that'll just do that automatically, and these sorts of things. I mean, that's probably the extreme example. But look, people have thrown it out there. I don't know where you land on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that AI doesn't do, well, or needs to be complemented by is just understanding the context and relationships that are out there. And so, farming context and biological systems and all the variables that happen out there with different animal personalities, different adaptations to what might be happening in terms of this year's weather conditions and overall climatic trends. There's a lot to unpack there. So I think there's definitely role for human interventions and experience. I mean, I think our food systems would struggle if they were entirely driven by software outcomes. So I definitely think there is a role for the context and relationships that only humans can bring. Having said that, there's some really powerful tools that are going to give greater levels of insight to what's happening across groups of individuals. In terms of livestock systems, what's happening in terms of responses to natural events. I think there's going to be some great tools and insights there, but. I don't know. Food production still seems like a very human activity to me, even if it gets supported by new tools and new technologies over time.
I agree with you for now. That's the thing. Because, I mean, didn't we just see Chat GPT-5 basically create itself from Chat GPT-4? Like, we don't know where this is going. And so you're right. The scenario you paint is totally applicable for, 2026. I don't know. What does it look like in 2030,
Yeah, well, I think even the concept of software, and which system do you use will change. I think we're going to end up seeing a lot of the functionality that's currently delivered to us in the version of a software interface, will now become a relationship with an agent, basically, and that each of those agents will effectively be, really well tuned to what your operations require, and so that whole relationship changes, and it still becomes more of an extra farmhand. It just happens to be a farmhand who's coming with a whole pile of data and insights that weren't available to previously, but you get to partner with them in a way, and it goes through both knowledge and insights, but also ability to act on those insights. But I still see it as being sort of like a partnership or an extra farmhand. I mean, particularly within our production systems here in New Zealand, ones that are nature positive, that are extensive, I think we'll see all sorts of factory automations happening, and some things that some of us are going to find pretty unappetizing in truly industrialized systems, which, that word gets thrown around quite a bit in New Zealand, but we don't really have industrialized systems here in New Zealand, and I don't see us going that way, because where we get our value from is still from those nature positive, natural based systems, which have such a market demand. And as long as we can sort of sort out our own sort of food inequalities that we might have here in New Zealand, I think we'll have, I think that's where our value is still going to come from, is sort of using those tools, but matching the natural systems.
I hope you're right. Yeah, I really do. I think that would be, an optimal way of, as you say, kind of protecting what we've got, plus using advancements in technology to get the most out of what we do. And you're right, we don't do, industrialization at scale, at least anyway. So that's where we have our point of difference. Long may it continue. Now, the other thing is you've got a series of regional events. Are they called AgriTech Unleashed? Is that happening around the country? Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, that's right. We've got 3 events scheduled for this year. What we keep on noticing, Dom, and you'll understand why this is. We see sort of interest around agri-tech turning up differently in different parts of the country, and that depends on what the production systems are in any particular place, or and what the presence or non-presence of a university and the research interest in that area, and then the engineering services and the technology companies and how they turn up. So we find it really important to sort of have these regional events that draw out what's happening in terms of agri-tech in that particular region. So this year we're visiting Auckland, Tauranga and Dunedin after doing Canterbury, Waikato and Hawke's Bay last year. And we'll keep on revisiting those centres. But next week we've got a session in Auckland that's really highlighting, where some of the investment flows have been into agri-tech in the last while. We've had some big news on that in the last couple of months in terms of the a scattering of really important investments that sort of indicate where the investment flows are going. In Tauranga, we'll go and look at what's happening, particularly in the hort sector around data maturity. And when we get to Dunedin, we'll really be talking about livestock systems and how they're evolving both here and overseas, and have some international partners coming along to that. So yeah, great series of events. Auckland next week, Thursday 16th, Tauranga August 21st, August 25th, and Dunedin on November 12th.
Well, keep an eye out for those. There'll be some really interesting discussions, I imagine, for people in those areas and surrounding, of course, as well. So fascinating stuff. We could, I'm sure there's plenty more we could talk about, but with that, I think we'll just reiterate the fact that those entries for Fieldays Innovation Awards close April the 24th. So get in if you've got a good idea, good product, good prototype, whatever it might be. And Brendan, as always, thank you for your time. That was very generous of you, and it's been fun chatting. So cheers for that.
Likewise, Tom. Always good to chat. Love your work.
All right, here's a very clever idea that came to light at the Fieldays Innovation Awards back in 2021. We're talking about Springarm, and since that Innovation Award in 2021, it's become a very popular on-farm accessory and water troughs. It's stocked in farmlands, and we've got one of the founders with us, Marianne Awburn, who I understand with husband Rick came up with this. So we're going to talk about that now. It's lovely to have you on, Marianne. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. So where did the idea for the Springarm come from?
Well, it wasn't me. It was my husband originally. We're just having so many arms break constantly, primarily in the drier parts of the year. And that had been going on for a long time because we had been farming in that same area for a wee while, up to nearly 20 years. And not on the same farm, actually, but that whole area is quite renowned for having a poor water supply. And so basically, if an arm broke and the trough was overflowing, it emptied our tanks and we just could never catch back up. And then that led to more arms breaking. So that's kind of where, that out of frustration, something had to be done. And I believe Rick basically stood out in the garage one day and thought, what if they could flex instead of just breaking? And the only thing he could see that could flex was the the little spring that holds up the stand on a motorbike. And so that's what he grabbed, and that's how he made the first prototype.
Wow, from a motorbike part. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it was really cool, and it was funny. And that's just how he is. He just gets ideas and just has a go. And he spent ages initially trying to put it all together. That was kind of the challenge. He was drilling holes through, he was cutting arms into pieces basically, and then drilling holes into it, putting that spring in, and there was just no way we could get it to hold. And anyway, a spring from a motorbike stand is way too flexible anyway, so it wasn't working initially. And even if we found some springs that were a bit stronger, we couldn't get them to stick onto the arms. Like we're not professional welders or anything, so we didn't actually realize initially that those two metals don't really stick together that well. So we got some help from some friends, and but yeah, welding was never the way to go. So that was kind of the biggest challenge, was just getting to a stage where we could use it.
So it went through different iterations before you finally came up with the finished design.
Definitely. I mean, I remember, I think we welded something like 50 springs onto these little bolts, and we were screwing them onto arms, and we were buying things to make threads onto rods and all this stuff, and they just kept breaking until we kind of put the spring directly onto the rod, and that seemed to work. And we actually engaged with a company in Hamilton at the time who sort of helped us make that thread work. And that's at the sort of same time, just when we were getting to that stage, that's when I was started to say, okay, this seems like it can work, but let's actually test it more properly. Because at that stage, Rick had just been sort of buying, oh, we'll buy one of these springs, or we'll buy one of those springs. Where initially, eventually I kind of went, okay, let's try it with these 5 different lengths and these 5 different strengths, and then see which one is going to truly work. Because yeah, it has to be that perfect balance between strength to cut the water off, and then flexibility to make it all last.
Yeah, so you brought a bit of order to the chaos.
Oh, I think he would agree, actually. Yes, because he's an inventor, so he's creative, but perhaps not structured.
Yeah, well, it's a good partnership then. So how do they work exactly?
Well, so the arm, the head was the other part of it, where that's universal, so that can fit into anything pretty much that's out there typically in the market in New Zealand. So you can just put it in like a normal arm into the ball cock, replace the arm. There's a spring bit that allows it to flex, so that it doesn't break when it gets pushed to the side. And if you compare a normal arm to our arm, the normal arm is, you can sort of bend it about 6 times and then it'll snap. Where we've tested our arm up to sort of 25,000. We had a machine doing that. That was not a person, but
It's going to say it
um,
take a while. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so that obviously lasts a whole lot longer, and not just the arm itself, but also the ball cock with its little teeth that kind of goes out and holds on to the arm. That's also protected a bit, in the sense that the arm flexes, not the ball cock.
So it's infinitely better than what people had to deal with beforehand.
Well, I think so. And we've had them installed on our farm now since basically a year before we launched. We started installing them into our troughs. So that's about, 6-7 years ago now. And we have had no issues with them at all. And to the point also where the ones that we sell, we don't really advertise it, but we do replace broken arms, as long as we get an image of the broken arm, or preferably we get the actual arm sent in, because we like to study it and see where why it might have broken. But we haven't had many of those, so people just take it back to their store or wherever they bought it, and if they have one.
So, what did winning that Fieldays Innovation Award mean for the progress of this product and the business as a whole?
It was amazing. Like, it meant such a big difference for us. Initially, we just did it because it was a cheap way of getting a site at the Fieldays, because they can be quite expensive. and I don't actually know what they are now, but I think they were like $1,000 at the time, which was much, much cheaper than, or they might even have been $500 actually in the prototype, because obviously we were in the prototype part of it, which is where you haven't actually launched your product yet, but you've got something that people can have a look at and give some feedback on. And the great thing about being in that innovation tent is that that's where, if you go to the field days, no matter who you are, people will generally go through there and be really interested in hearing your story. So it was a fantastic way to get our story and our concept out there, and we were so well received. So that was really, really uplifting.
Yeah, I can imagine it wouldn't have been much harm. It wouldn't have done much harm for business. So, from the winning the prototype to actually getting it to market, what was the sort of the time frame and around that?
Well, we were almost ready. Like, we had our product pretty much ready to go. So I think we got it to market within a month afterwards. We were just kind of finalizing the website so that we could actually sell it. And obviously just keen to see what people had to say about our product before we launched it, because what if we needed to just make some final adjustments and whatnot. But it turned out it was pretty much ready to go as it was. So yeah, it was really quick afterwards, and that was fantastic, because obviously winning it gave us a fair bit of publicity, so that helped with sales straight away. People knew what it was, people were asking for it, so
So that's good. That's a good way to start a business, is when people are actually asking for the product, yeah, before it's even ready. I mean, I think there was some good prize money attached as well. That couldn't have hurt.
Oh, the prize money were fantastic. It came right at the right time. I actually don't know what we would have done without it, because it was so hard when you're starting a business, as many people would appreciate. You don't really have anything. You can't really borrow much money because you don't have any track record. So that went primarily on covering all our lawyer bills, actually, because we had been pursuing intellectual property protection. So that, a lot of it went for that, and then the other half went to buying the first spring arms so that we could get some out the door. Because yeah, if you've never done this before, you sort of don't realize how much money you actually have to spend up front before you can then sell the product.
Yeah, because where's the manufacturing done?
Well, we ended up partnering with Metal Form, which was another really nice thing that came out of the publicity of winning. Metal Form is a company based in Denmark, and they do a bunch of different agriculture products. And so they now manufacture and distribute and do everything for us, basically. So we don't have a lot to do with the day-to-day running anymore, which is fantastic, because we love what we do, so we didn't really want this to become our full-time gig.
See, that's what I was going to ask you, whether or not that is now actually a full time thing. But you've kind of you've come up with the idea. You presumably get a cut of what's sold, and but you let the specialist company take care of the nuts and bolts and springs, so to speak, Marianne.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And they're doing such a great job. That's what they do every day. That's what they know how to do. They've got marketing specialists, and they changed the product slightly so that it's cheaper to manufacture, so that, because they understood how that process works. So that was fantastic to get a bit of input from them, and for them to be managing it.
What do they sell for, incidentally?
That varies a bit, sort of between $25 and $30, depending on where you go and get it. But yeah, we have actually got a bit of a special on. If anybody wants to, we've created a special coupon for anyone that's listening. They can go to our online website, springarm.co.nz, and put in Rick's podcast at checkout as a coupon code and get 10% off.
Ah, very good. All right, perfect. And they're well priced anyway, so that's great. Rex podcast. Make sure you do that, listeners. Those of you that are interested in purchasing these spring arms. Now, Marianne, you also have a role with Primary Ag ITO as well, don't you?
Yeah, that's interesting. People still call us Ag ITO. We're actually primary ITO because Ag ITO merged with a whole lot of businesses 7 years ago.
There you
But
go. Okay, so primary ITO. Yeah, what do you do there?
I'm the agriculture sector manager, so look after dairy and meat and fiber, and basically look after the relationships with our customers, make sure that we deliver what they need, and just keep a finger on the pulse in the industry to make sure that they have what they want in terms of vocational training. Um, for me, this was my dream job, so I wasn't willing to give it up because I was a school teacher originally, which I always wanted to do, but then also worked on farm full time for a wee while before I became a teacher, and realized I wasn't prepared to leave farming behind, but also didn't want to leave education behind. So this is a perfect mixture of the two, and absolutely love my job with primary ITO. So
Yep,
yeah.
that's great. That's good to hear, actually. And also, in relation to all of that as well, you actually write articles about New Zealand agriculture for a Danish magazine, I believe.
Yeah, I do a bit of do a bit of writing. That's something I do a few. It happens every couple of months, just from a New Zealand, a Danish perspective in New Zealand, I suppose. It's always interesting because when I talk about summer and winter, I always have to remember to put the months in because it's the other way around than at home. Because I'm from Denmark, obviously, so hence why I can write in Danish to the Danish audience.
That's great. What do you sort of write about? What
Oh,
sort of
it's just basic kind of, how the season's been, what's going on. I mean, my last article was about PC1 here in the Waikato, which was quite a big thing, which we're still waiting, I suppose, exactly how that's going to come out. But with the government and having sort of put everything on hold, yeah, so just anything and everything, really.
So, you're just giving readers in that part of the world just a bit of an update and perspective from what we do here, farming wise.
Yes, for sure. And it was really interesting when we were talking about the tax on greenhouse gases, because that was huge in Denmark at the same time as here. And they were keeping a really close eye on what we did actually to sort of, I think everybody around the world was keeping an eye on each other to see who was going to go first with the decision. So it's always really interesting to share stories.
Yeah, that's very cool. Whereabouts do you farm in New Zealand?
We are in the Waikato, so just out of Te Awamutu. So Rick's on the farm, and obviously I work for Primary ITO, so I'm not too involved in the farming life at the moment.
Is he working on anything else, Rick?
Well, there's definitely an idea brewing, but we have struggled to find the time because it takes so much time to actually get it to a stage where you can show people. So watch the space.
Watch this space, indeed. Well, that's cool. It's a good story you've got there. I love the, from the motorbike part right through to the Innovation Award and, through to seeing it realised as a product in the market. It's a good story. You must be, happy with the way things have turned out so far, at least anyway.
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant, and like I say, we're so grateful to Middleform for helping us with that side of things, and grateful to the Fieldays Innovation Awards that it was even a thing, and for giving us the publicity.
Yeah, the Innovation Awards for this year, they close on Friday, the 24th of April, and the winners are going to be announced at a private awards function during Field Days at Mystery Creek on the 11th of June. That's the Thursday. So if you want to get those Innovation Awards in, those entries close, as I say, the 24th of April. So you'd probably be encouraging people, I imagine, Marianne, if they've got something like you guys did, just to, give it a shot. What's there to lose, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Get involved. I mean, it's a cheap way to get to field days if you want to display your product. And we were just a normal farming couple from the Waikato, so never discount yourself. Even if you think you're not haven't got a big engine behind you, you can still do really well if your product is what the industry wants.
Yeah, very good advice. Exactly. If it's what the industry wants, if it's what the market's after, then there will be space for it. Absolutely. Very good. Thanks for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
No, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you feel so inclined, please like, comment, and subscribe. We have new episodes for you every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. See you next time.